Good morning, Devils fans. Recording on my laptop here over at the in-laws. Quick shout out for them as they actually have their own YouTube channel. So if you're interested in anything Disney, check out the Tourist Trek on YouTube. Do lots of Disney coverage. So I'm kind of in their, what they call their YouTube room, recording today's video. So obviously, not too much news coming out today. We had an off day yesterday, and as of this recording, nothing from Amanda or the team about what the lineup might look up for tonight. But it is a home game. We are playing the Islanders. I'm expecting a fairly decent lineup. I know Jack, Luke, Brat, Toffoli, and the likes had not played the last game, so hopefully we get to see them a bit more. Bit of news that did come out today for those that are interested over at The Athletic. We finally did get our season preview from Shayna, Dom, and the likes. We did come in, I believe it's at 8th overall in the league. Not going to go too in-depth here, but I did want to react a bit to that. So the biggest reason why we are probably not as high as a lot of us would rank us above other teams that are ahead of us here is mostly because of priors on the team. Most notably is going to be Dougie, who has phenomenal priors except for the one season dip with the injury. The model at him being at 30 years old really does not like that, so it's a bit hesitant on projecting him having a similar season to last year. And then Akira Schmid, who does not have a lot of NHL games to him. So those 6 games that he had played a couple of years ago with us that were absolutely atrocious, they weigh just as heavily as some of the more recent ones. Not as much, as it does take more recent things in higher regard than further back, but due to the small sample size, they are taken in regard, and so it does not project him to be as high up as we might think he should be this year. All of that said, we still came in 8th overall in the league. I believe the only teams ahead of us were the Oilers, the Leafs, the Knights, the Avs, the Stars, Hurricanes, and Rangers. So lots of West Coast teams, and then obviously the big names out here in the East with Canes and Rangers. Rangers is the obvious standout there. I think it's pretty clear to us and everyone that we are and should be above them in this. Canes, it makes sense, not going to argue there. But with just Sturkin and their guys just having a lot better priors to go off of, kind of makes sense. So again, throughout the article, they do reiterate over and over that they are much higher on our team than the model is, but this whole process is going by the model, so they do not put personal bias into it, basically at all for this practice. So other guys that they're kind of low on, the model is on that they're much higher on is going to be like John Marino, Siegenthaler, our defensive defenseman, who Marino ranked within the top 125 players in the league as a shutdown D-man, which is really good and strong for us. Obviously, Luke coming in, it is hard to project what he's going to look like, but they are very high on Luke, so are we. And Jack is considered one of the top forwards in the entire league. Nico is one of the top second forwards in the entire league. And then as you go down into our depth, Toffoli is, I think he was ranked as our 6th forward. As if you compare him as for 6 forwards across all these other teams, he is in like the 99th percentile there. So the model does really like our team. Biggest reason we are this low, like I said, is just younger guys with some prior dips and older guys like Dougie with not the pure track record that we have seen. Just doesn't like aging players, just same as I do. But I've said it before, I think Dougie is a bit of an anomaly there. I think he's going to age similar to a Burns, a bit like Hedman, hopefully not recent Hedman, but cup winning Hedman as well. So I'm not going to argue too much with it. I think those other teams above us, you can see where they are getting their rankings from. Knights, the Stanley Cup champs. Avs are absolutely stacked. Stars have a crazy lineup where they get, obviously, the goalie advantage with Ottinger. Rangers, I straight up disagree with, but you can see it with just Sturkin. Oilers, McDavid and Draisaitl, 2 best players in the league. Leafs are going to be hard carried by their big 4 guys. And Canes is the Canes. Not going to argue. They beat us. They had a better regular season. I think we have the better long-term outlook, but they are clearly the only other team, I think, really competing with us in the East for winning the division. So, yeah, I don't want to go too in-depth there on this article because it really goes into a bit more of the nuances, but definitely check it out if you get a free subscription or if you can get one of the discounted rates. It is pretty good. Devils coverage is all right, but if you care about league-wide stuff and like reading about a lot of other teams, it's mostly worth if you get it at the discounted price. I definitely wouldn't pay full price for it. That's just my thoughts and feelings around there. Um, there really wasn't, like I said, too much else coming out. We're still in preseason. I really hope we get to see Tice and Nolan both in this game. I want to see them matched up on the line together, really see what they can do. Possibly one on the left, one on the right wing with McLeod in the middle would probably be an ideal setup. Clark should get a few more chances, but I just don't see him really making it over either of those two. Bastion, would love to see him get into a game, see where he's at. Is he going to start the season IRR or not? Or is he ready to go after a few more preseason games? One last thing I really want to dive into for this episode, and it's where I'm going to wrap up, is where does Alexander Holtz really fit into the lineup? It's something I've seen discussed, especially after the last game. I've seen him be talked about he should be with Jack. No, he's doing great with Nico. No, we need to slide him down to the third line with Palat and Haula. And while I think there is merit to all three of those options, and we know Lindy, these lines are going to shuffle around anyway. He's probably going to end up on all three of those lines at some point. I'm sure we'll see Brad or Timo or somebody like that even ending up with Palat and Haula, just like we saw in the one preseason game already. So that's just how Lindy runs it. But for me, I think Holtz is actually very well situated with Nico and Timo. So my thought process for that is I think it's actually going to give him the best starts against competition for where he's at in his career right now. I think if you put him with Jack and Brad, one, the line kind of loses a lot of the grit of going down below the blue line. That's not really Holtz's game at all, playing in the boards. And while Jack and Brad can dance and dangle and stick handle around guys down there, they're not really getting into the mud down below there. So against certain matchups, that could be a little bit more ugly. Not that they're going to get outplayed the other way, but just generating chances off of that might not be as much as having Toffoli there, which is where we are currently set up, and I agree with. Also, Jack and Brat are already big triggermen there. Holtz, I think, would work great there. Three guys that can all shoot, three guys can set up plays. I think that part worked. But just when you have someone like Toffoli, I think just works out better. I think that is preferred to you, so you have someone that can get in the mud on that line. And that line's also very likely going to get the hardest defensive matchups. Other teams are going to match their top D-men and their top shutdown guys against Jack. We saw it last year, even with Nico and Timo playing together sometimes. I think Jack will continuously always get the harder defensive matchups paired against him, and I think that will make it harder for Holtz on the whole to really do what he needs to do. Moving him down to the third line, Palat and Haula, I think he would get a lot more defensive starts. Now, while Nico got the lion's share of that last year, that's because Palat and Haula, well, Palat was injured for most of the time, and then Haula played up with Jack, so obviously this is basically a whole new third line for us. I think Palat and Haula are going to get a lot of the D-zone starts, and that's not really where you want Holtz at as well. Now, don't get me wrong, Nico is also still going to get a lot of those. So there's no, 100% offensive zone start guy. Jack is obviously going to get the lion's share of that, but he still is going to get the occasional D-zone start as well. So with all of that, Jack probably getting the hardest defensive matchups, Palat and Haula probably getting the more D-zone starts. That's why I think Holtz kind of fits in that medium with Nico and Timo. Nico and Timo can play below the blue line and let Holtz just circle around looking for one-timers. Nico is obviously insanely defensively responsible as the likely Selke favorite going into the season. Timo can get into the mud and play the physical games. Both Nico and Timo can play along the boards. I think Nico is one of the best along the board players in the entire league. And that really just helps insulate Holtz the best out of all the lines. Is it going to be perfect? No, but no NHL line is absolutely perfect. Even the perfection line is no longer even a thing. And even at their height, they still had their issues, obviously, even if those three guys were phenomenal at their peaks. So Nico, Timo, Holtz, I think just is going to be the most balanced of all of that. They're still going to get D-zone starts. They're still going to get hard defensive matchups, but they're not going to get the far ends of both of those like our third line and Jack's line are going to get. And that's why, in my opinion, as lines are currently built, it is fairly perfect. But we're going to see juggling. That's just what Ruff likes to do. And I have no real issues with it. Top 9, really, you can shuffle and move around as much as you want, however you want, and I think it's going to work out perfectly. But yeah, I really just wanted to touch on the Holtz conversation. Wasn't too much to go off of yesterday or so far this morning. So tomorrow morning, I will have a good recap of tonight's game for you guys, a bit more to talk about. And yeah, that's going to do it for today. So I'll see you all tomorrow morning, as always, and forever, baby. Let's go Devils.